Hi, I'm Pastor Kurt, and this is your 5-minute Bible study. Today, we're going to look at John chapter 9, verses 1 through 41. Now, this long section is all about blindness, but not necessarily the kind you might be thinking of. It begins when Jesus and his disciples come upon this guy who was born physically blind. And the disciples say something very stupid to Jesus. They say, "Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" They assume that this man's blindness is a punishment for sin, either his own or his parents. Jesus jumps right in and basically says, that's not how it works. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed. Okay, I'll come back to that in just a second. Sometimes today, people still think the way those disciples thought. Sometimes we think that if somebody has some kind of physical condition, that it's a punishment for something. Sometimes we don't come out and say that because we know we shouldn't, but sometimes we still think it. Right? Sometimes we see people who are blind or have some other physical difference, and we wonder what caused that. What choices did they make, or choices did other people make? Of course, that's not how it works, right? We know enough about science and the body that we know that's not how these things work. Well, go back to Jesus' answer now. This man was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. Does that mean that today, people who have these kind of physical challenges are that way so that God's works might be revealed in them? Jesus is talking about this particular guy. And we see that play out in the rest of the chapter. Because had this guy not been physically blind from the beginning, then he wouldn't be able to witness about Jesus for the rest of the chapter. So think about it narratively. Think about this like as a story structure. Most of this chapter here is about this guy after Jesus healed him and gave him his physical sight back. It's about him witnessing about what just happened, telling people about what Jesus just did for him. Had he not been physically blind at the beginning, then he wouldn't have been able to do that. We wouldn't have heard his witness. As we read his witness, though, it's a really fascinating scene because starting around verse 8 and going until pretty much the end of the chapter, we have a really long section of this guy telling people about what Jesus did, them not believing him retelling his story, and it goes on and on. But if you pay really close attention, you'll notice that Jesus as a character isn't in the scene. This is the longest section of text in the Gospels where Jesus himself is not present. Because the emphasis here is on this guy's witness. It's on him telling the story about what Jesus did for him. So that happens at the very beginning of the chapter. Jesus heals the guy. But then the vast majority of the section is about him telling his story and people not believing him. Some people say, oh, he looks like the guy who was blind, but this guy can see, so it's got to be a different guy. No, it's the same guy. They even bring in this guy's parents and say, is this your son? Was he born blind? And they say, yes, this is our son, and yes, he was born blind, but we don't know how he can see now. Ask him. He's of age. He can answer for himself. This guy is telling his story, and people don't believe him. And he gets frustrated with them. He's like, how many times do I have to tell you people this? Jesus healed me. Why aren't you listening to what I'm saying? At the end of this scene, Jesus comes back and he finds the guy. And then there's a line at the very end When we hear Jesus talk about spiritual blindness, that's what this chapter is all about. It's not about the guy's physical blindness. That's a metaphor here, okay? Because here's this guy witnessing about what Jesus has done in his life, and all of these people who don't see it. They don't get it. They don't understand. They are blind to what this guy is telling them. This chapter then leads directly into John chapter 10, which is all about Jesus the Good Shepherd. And I'll say more about that in the next video. So as you think about your own witness, as you think about your own story, about how Jesus has healed you, how Jesus has worked in your life, and how people don't listen, continue to tell your story. That's what this guy did. Even though people didn't understand, even though they didn't get it, he still told his story. And his understanding of Jesus grew in the telling of it. This is a wonderful chapter. And as I said, it now leads directly into John chapter 10. There's your 5-minute Bible study. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Thanks.